Hello and welcome to the CDO magazine interview series. I'm Michal Klaus with Ataccama, and we are partnering with CDO magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Ron Thompson, Chief Data Officer and Deputy Digital Transformation Officer at NASA. Hi, Ron, how are you doing today?
Good. Hi, Michael. How are you? I'm doing just fine. Good to be with you today.
All organizations that are using the data as an asset, right? Internal, external, it doesn't really make a big difference. They're in a situation where you have many smart people across the organization. Let's call them data people. And you have quite powerful technologies available, both to process the data, you know, all the cloud platforms, data platforms, right? And let's say the analytical tools. It is quite easily available to those smart people. And what you want to do is to let the data people create, in general sense, right? Something interesting, something valuable, and maybe create, you know, in some iterations like proof of concept, etc. But at some point, whatever the people create, in general sense, the data product, it will start being used by, you know, internal consumers, external consumers. And this movement, which I would sum as data democratization movement, I think is very healthy. I think it is the core of innovation in businesses in general, and not only businesses, non-profit organizations as well. So it is very good movement. On the other hand, for various reasons, including the ones that you mentioned, but also regulations, security, privacy, all the PII regulations, you as an organization wants to have some oversight, some control on how people are actually accessing data, which data they're using, for what purpose they're using the data. And these two kind of, let's say, forces, drivers, a little bit seem to be in a conflict. And I would be interested, I've been asking this question many of our customers and other organizations. So I'm really interested to hear how this conflict or this balancing act is happening in NASA.
Yeah, Michael, it is the secret sauce of I would argue, the successful.
So you're not going to tell us then?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to balance this every day. And I've had, fortunate in my career, I've had jobs where I had direct line authority over I've been a CIO at other government agencies, large organizations, you know, 8,000 people, $4.3 billion. So that direct authority was really easy. But the role of the CDO is more of an influencer, more of a collaborator, more of a change agent role. So you really have to walk that tightrope. And I personally don't start with that compliance side. So about 2019, the role of the CDO in government agencies was codified, and we have a lot of federal data strategy that we have to do, really good foundational elements at this point. We are in that maturation as a government space, but I don't use that compliance stick. I don't use that heavy-handed stick. So you mentioned sort of the democratization versus centralization of things. It is a balance. You know, we have to do many to fewer on our capabilities and services that we provide. So we're leveraging the data fabric to really put in architectural standards and build out data services that can be efficient and effective across the enterprise, right? And we're spanning multi-cloud environments. When we do this, we're leveraging where the data is, and with the goal of making sure we bring to the mission outcomes and end-to-end integration, right, of all our various data types. You know, I mentioned aeronautics, I mentioned scientific, and we have space, obviously human exploration, you know, so these are all the big domain, and space technology. So these are all the domains of data that we have, but we are now approaching, and Michael, I think this is the this is sort of the balance. It's really that end-to-end integration of that data across the national enterprise, and I would argue across the federal landscape as well, because we're really having good conversations, part of our data council across the federal agencies, about reusing data, collect once, reusing data, for example, for our citizens, right? So if you look at that, Michael, it's really a blend between, you do have sort of the mandates, the compliance work you have to do, but it's really showing that value. And how you do that is really showing that value to the mission, showing that value to that end customer about what could be done if you bring disparate data sets together to answer unknown questions. And once they see it, once they see that data visualization layer be built out, once they see it is a lighter touch, we leverage technologies such as low, no-code platforms where it doesn't take a lot of programming to deliberate these data. And as you mentioned, really showing and making that single access point or fewer access points than we have right now, versus being domain experts, or versus having to know the person that where that data is housed. So if you think about it from an IT perspective, a system or an application doesn't exist for the data. So it really is the tide that binds everything, how it's stitched together.
Yeah. So you're basically saying that it is quite a delicate role of having the mandate, but not really using the force of the mandate, but convincing the people by showing them the value of what needs to be done.
It is, Michael. And I had some really good advice my early time at NASA from a shuttle astronaut. And he said, look, I understand what you're doing, Ron. It makes perfect sense. But no, it's just like flying a shuttle. No, you need slight, steady, consistent pressure over time, right?
Yeah.
You can't whipsaw. You can't be too, I guess, focused in one area and not be mindful of another. So I thought that was really sage advice. I was very fortunate to get it at the time. It really helped me be successful, in my time here.
So the advice for other CDOs is you're in it for a long run.
Exactly. It is not like a quarterly, like a public company that's quarterly profits. It is, you have to be looking down, 2, 5, 10 years out.
Yeah, that's really long run. I'll still kind of drill into it a little bit. How do you convince a very, very smart data scientist that he or she shouldn't just go out to a data lake and pull some data and spin whatever a Snowflake instance, do something with it, but rather go to some governed source of the data in the age where all of it is technically possible, right? They no longer need to go to IT or someone who will provide them the resources and the tools. They can just do it, right? How do you convince them not to do it? How do you convince them to do it in the right way so that it's eventually high quality, reusable, governed result?
Michael, I think NASA has a long history of having brilliance and absolutely forward-leaning people and what we do. So what we need to show is how do you reduce the barrier to entry to do that? How do you go to a place where it is not cumbersome to so it's really that initial and then the routine work. How much can you bring in automation such as AI, ML, and really reduce? So we like to have I don't want to say we're at the stage yet, Michael. We're at a stage where we want to have folks go in and stand those things up, because we need to know about it. We need a good inventory first. So please tell us what you're doing. We're not going to hinder. We're not going to stop. Just make sure we know, so the inventory is there. And then the whole concept of our data fabric, we're calling it our enterprise data platform, is to really bring a tool set, bring a capability, bring through APIs, a data fabric where we can plug in. So it's really to reduce those cumbersome, those points of entry to access data, so it'd be easy to bring in. And when we do that, then we'll go in and say, hey, we have a search capability that you can come on and use for next to nothing, versus you standing and spinning up. But we want to be very mindful. We don't want to shut that innovation down, that spirit down. We want to reduce that barrier to entry, and they will see the value once they're brought into our enterprise data platform, and over time, just gravitate to that naturally. Yeah, so that's actually amazing to hear, because you just said something that we kind of believe in also at Ataccama, is that with the right concept and also the right technology, you can actually make the governance, the quality management kind of ubiquitous without actually hindering, the innovation and being an obstacle for these people who are really smart, really valuable, and increasingly even quite powerful in the organization, right? They're no longer without any voice in terms of what should be done, how things should or shouldn't be done. So you mentioned the term data fabric a couple of times, which we think it's a great, again, great tool if you use it in the right way. We don't think it's a silver bullet. Let's say some people say that the data fabric, again, is of the little too centralized nature, that someone needs to think it through, someone needs to design it, someone needs to architect it. It takes time to build it before it brings any value. What would your reaction be to this? Yeah, I mean, even though we say data fabric here, it is based on the loose standards of a data fabric. It is not, for example, I don't look for products that all have a data fabric stamp of approval, or whatever, whatever we're doing right now. But it's just sort of like ITIL, from the IT world. These are recommended guidelines and paths, and I tend to describe it as guardrails, right? But it's really, all these things provide us a way to get to that bringing value to mission, right? And we find that using a human-centered design approach to figuring out what the end goals are and bringing solutions to meet those end goals are the way to go. Early in our digital transformation journey, about 2 years ago, we took that approach to identify pain points for the agency. And so even though these standards exist, Michael, I mean, this isn't an endorsement for any one thing. We're saying NASA's only for this, but there are really good principles out of what, for example, the data fabric is. So we're taking those, we're seeing what is applicable to us, what would work for our culture, what would work for our technology here, and applying them. Yeah, I think it's absolutely, it needs to be kind of tailored to each organization, culture, standards, processes, etc. By the way, the way you describe data fabric, it almost feels it already is kind of combined with the let's say the later concept of data mesh, which is giving a lot of independence to, let's say, the domain data owners, and defining, let's say, minimum set of standards that everyone has to comply with. But outside of that, they can do whatever they want. They can use whichever data processing platforms, whichever tools, but there are certain kind of minimal requirements for the data product in general sense, right? Combine 3 tables, do some analysis on it. It's a data product, and it has a set of requirements that when it kind of complies with those requirements, it is expected that it will be easy to reuse the product. Well, first of all, find the data product, and second, to use it, right, with some standard interfaces, documentation, etc., etc. So, am I right when you're talking about the kind of loose data fabric, that it's kind of more of a data mesh? You're spot on. I mean, we look at this and we know through our enterprise data platform that we'll never have one repository for everything.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
you know, and I'll just make another comment about this. So we need to know where they are right now. So that's why we're taking a very light approach, right? Please tell us where it is so we can make sure we know about it. We can link in where, you know, where it makes sense through, you know, through our standards and through our architecture. And then as the next life cycle of that program or the system or you know, the sort of the infrastructure in the back end, that next life cycle come and take a look and see if we can build it into the core, right? So we can't afford to rip and replace everything. We can't afford to bring everything in, but that next cycle of really the innovation cycle and the next cycle of modernization, we can align in where it makes sense, we bring it in. So we know there's going to be always data sitting out in these various entities, containers, environments that we need to link in, but we need to know about them first, and that's really where we are. Is that we're at that foundational stage.
So when you say you don't think you will ever have a central repository, I assume you mean, let's say the catalog, right? Or the metadata.
No, we'll have a catalog, you know, and that's, I would say realistically, we probably know 70% of what's out there now. It will never be 100%, Michael. So let's not go down that path. You know, because there are, you know, innovative things happening out in the wild, and quite frankly, in our instance, remember we have data collection mechanisms that are out of the solar system. So think about how do you retrofit those. So it's not just on planet; these are off planet assets. So that's why I say the next maturation of But I do know that identifying those, and again, this part of the federal data strategy. Part of it is in our NASA data strategy is get that foundational build, get the foundation built, and then as they become more and more integrated into that next cycle of innovation, as they get more and more integrated, I think there's where the value will increase for the agency.
I think we could really spend the whole day discussing the details of it, and I think it's very inspiring to hear in this type of let's say questionnaire organization how you're able, in a sense, to do your job right. So Ron, thanks a lot for joining us today. I believe myself, I have learned a lot, and I believe our audience will learn as well a lot about NASA. And for everyone, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you, Ron. Hope to see you some other day.
Thank you, Michael. It's nice meeting you, and thank you for having me on today. It's great to tell the NASA story and celebrate what our folks are doing here. Just thank you very much.
Thank you.